Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Haribo Goda Haribo Jaya Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivrajagacharya Asatara Satya Shishimad Divine Grace Chaitanya Goswami Abhay Chandravinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Jai Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya So, I hope all of you feel well. Good mood. Very nice. So we will begin with Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 12, which is entitled Birth of Emperor Parikshit. And today we are looking at text number 17 of this chapter. So I don't believe it's on the board anywhere, so just do the best we can. I'll recite the verse and then we'll go through it word by word together. Tasman namna Vishnurata Iti loke bhavishyati Mahabharata Mahabhaga na sandeho. Mahabhagavato Mahan. We'll see what this means. Please repeat. Tasmat. Therefore. Namna. By the name. Vishnu Rata. Protected by Vishnu. The personality of Godhead. Iti. Thus. Loke. In all the planets. Bhavishyati. Shall become well known. Mahabhaga. Most fortunate. Na. No. Sandeha. Doubts. Mahabhagavata. The first class devotee of the Lord. Mahan. Qualified by all good qualities. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. For this reason, this child will be well known in the world as one who is protected by the personality of Godhead. O most fortunate one, there is no doubt that this child will become a first-class devotee and will be qualified with all good qualities. Purport. The Lord gives protection to all living beings because He is their supreme leader. The Vedic hymns confirm that the Lord is the supreme personality among all personalities. The difference between the two living beings is that the one, the personality of Godhead, provides for all other living beings, and by knowing Him, one can achieve eternal peace. This is from Katha Upanishad. Such protection is given by His different potencies to different grades of living beings. But as far as His unalloyed devotees are concerned, He gives the protection personally. Therefore, Maharaj Parikshit is protected from the very beginning of his appearance in the womb of his mother. And because he is especially given protection by the Lord, the indication must be concluded that the child would be a first-class devotee of the Lord with all good qualities. There are three grades of devotees, namely the Mahabhagavata, Madhyam Adhikari, and the Kanishta Adhikari. Those who go to the temples of the Lord and offer worshipful respect to the deity without sufficient knowledge in the theological science, and therefore without any respect for the devotees of the Lord, are called materialistic devotees, or Kanishta Adhikari, or the third grade devotees. Secondly, the devotees who have developed genuine service mentality for the Lord and thus makes friendships with similar devotees only, show favor to the neophytes and avoid the atheists, are called the second grade devotees. But those who see everything in the Lord, or everything of the Lord, and also see in everything an eternal relation of the Lord, so that there is nothing within their purview of sight except the Lord, are called the Mahabhagavatas, or the first grade devotees of the Lord. Such first grade devotees of the Lord are perfect in all respects. A devotee who may be in any one of these categories is automatically qualified by all good qualities, and thus a Mahabhagavata devotee, like Maharaj Parikshit, is certainly perfect in all respects. And because Maharaj Parikshit took his birth in the family of Maharaj Yudhisthira, he is addressed herein as the Mahabhagavata, or the greatest of the fortunates. The family in which a Mahabhagavata takes his birth is fortunate because due to the birth of a first grade devotee, the members of the family, past, present, and future, up to 100 generations, become liberated by the grace of the Lord out of respect or his beloved devotee. Therefore, the highest benefit is done to one's family simply by becoming an unalloyed devotee of the Lord. Once more, the verse reads, Tasman namna Vishnu Ratha iti loke bhavishyati ma bhaga nasan deho maha bhagavato mahan. Kindly repeat the translation after me. For this reason, this child will be well known in the world as one who is protected by the personality of Godhead. O most fortunate one, there is no doubt that this child will become a first-class devotee and will be qualified with all good qualities. Mukam karoti bachalam magam langayate gadimya kripatanam mande sri gurun nidatarnam. So first, I'll start about these grades of devotees. Again, Srila Prabhupada writes about the Kanishta Adhikari, those who go to the temples of the Lord and offer worshipful respects to the deity without sufficient knowledge in the theological science, and therefore without any respect for the devotees of the Lord, are called materialistic devotees, or Kanishta Adhikari, or the third grade devotees. And then Prabhupada goes on to say that those of us who have a more developed service attitude, then they're naturally drawn to mix and make friendship with other servants of the Lord. And so they are called Madhyam. Madhyam means middle. Middle, more advanced than Kanishta. And then finally Mahabhagavata, or Uttam, they're actually seeing Krishna everywhere. Another term for that is Nirapeksha. Aksha, I was explaining. What was it? In Rotterdam, before I came here. Aksha means eye. Just like there's this term Pratyaksha, which means sense perception. So eye is a symbol of all perception. We often say, I see, when we don't really mean that we're seeing it with the eye, but it means we've understood or perceived. But eye remains as symbol, seeing power as symbol of perception and knowledge and understanding. So pratyaksha means to understand things through the senses. So anyway, nirapeksha, again, aksha is in this word. And nira means nothing else than, and then in parentheses, Krishna. An Uttama Adhikari is nirapeksha because he sees nothing else. Although in this material world, according to our, pratyaksha, material vision, there are so many things to see besides Krishna. But wherever Mahabhagavata may be, he sees only Krishna. Prabhupada says not necessarily that he's seeing Krishna directly face to face wherever he turns his eyes, but whatever he sees, he does not miss or he does not ignore the connection to Krishna. Because Krishna, as explained here, indicated here, Krishna also means his energy. What is the meaning of God? This is, now we come to Mayavadi philosophy. You see, one of the grave defects of the Mayavadi philosophy, at least in its orthodox original version, of course now there's so many new forms of Mayavadi philosophy churned out by different people's brains, and they don't care for the tradition, but there is actually orthodox Mayavadi philosophy which is preserved within a sampradaya, which even Srila Prabhupada indicates, therefore makes it in a way bona fide, although we as Vaishnavas do not except Mayavadi philosophy. Still, because there is the Shankara Sampradaya, which goes on even today. There are 4 main centers of this teaching in India, presided over by a spiritual master, spiritual authority, who is also called Shankaracharya, not Adi, not the original Shankaracharya, but he is the Acharya coming in the line of Shankara. There is some tradition to it. So in that Orthodox Mayavadi philosophy, Brahman, the absolute truth, or God if you will, of course this is not a personal God, but Brahman has no shakti, has no power. Brahman just is, sat. This is very much like the old idea of some Greek philosophers like Aristotle foremost, I think, who conceived of being, that the ultimate being is just an entity of thought, and this being just thinks of himself. He exists in some ideal realm of ideas, and simply is meditating or contemplating on himself, on his own glories, I guess, although this being is impersonal, so it's hard to conceive of what glories an impersonal thing has. But anyway, he's this being, it, we should say, not he. It is contemplating itself. And then somehow or other, Aristotle does not explain this, and it seems like there is no explanation. Somehow or other, around this being, the creation unfolds. But it's not due to the will of this being. It's not due to some energy that he's emanating. It's just again, unexplainable side effect. So that is even there in the Greek philosophy, and it is enshrined in the Orthodox Mayavadi philosophy. This question of how creation unfolds, its relationship to Brahman, for the Mayavadis is a point which they say is, in their technical philosophical language, anirvyachaniya, which means you cannot talk about it. Don't ask that question. In other words, it is, and then they will say it is inconceivable, so it cannot be understood. What is the relationship between Maya? Because everything, this is Mayavadi philosophy, everything that we can know in this world through our senses, and everything we can conceive with our mind, anything that is human experience, anything that has form, activity, name, quality, any relationship, it must be Maya. Must certainly be illusion. It cannot be real, because reality is simply Sat, eternal self-consciousness, expressed just like we have our Maha Mantra, they have their what they call Mahavakya, Tattvamasi. I am that. Tat means that. So this is the best way for them to express their truth. I am that Brahman. And that's all you can say about Brahman. I am that. The essence of yourself is also that same Brahman. So, yes, anirvyachaniya. Do not inquire into this area of the relationship between this world and that absolute truth. You cannot say that this world is emanating from that absolute truth. That is denied by the original Shankaracharya. So how this world is existing, we can't discuss that. So there's a kind of joke, there are philosophical jokes actually, in the form of there's a series of stories about one so-called Guru Paramartika. These are humorous stories from South India, and they're told to children to teach them philosophy, because children have simple minds and cannot understand philosophy presented as philosophers presented. So these humorous stories are there to help them understand these things. So there is the story of the man. He was a poor man who went into a restaurant, which they call in South India hotel. So he went into a hotel, and he only had money enough for a plate of rice, simple, plain white rice. But also in this hotel, they were offering samosas. So that means the samosas were being cooked, and the whole hotel was filled with the smell of samosas. And the proprietor of this hotel, he was a rascal. Just like I was saying, I've been telling in recent classes about the difference in mentality between Shudra, Vaishya, Kshatriya, and Brahmana. So one of the differences you can see is in their value systems that they adopt. So Shudra is, of course, he's oriented towards work. So this is the level of his understanding. Physical work, the relationships of physical things to one another. In other words, a Shudra has to carry, is told, you carry this load of bricks from here into the building so that the bricklayers can continue making the wall. So then he has to calculate. This is his value system. How many bricks, how heavy they are, how many I can carry on my head, as they do in India. You see. So this is the Shudra thinking. All in terms of issues like weight and mass and size and distance, spatial distance, length, breadth, height. And so his understanding of everything is locked into that. Therefore, Srila Prabhupada said scientists are Shudras. For instance, when they try to understand the relationship between sun and the moon, or sun and the earth, rather, famous problem, famous issue Prabhupada raised in his ISKCON. It is only in terms of spatial distance and relative motion and relative mass and all these things. Whereas actually the relationship between the earth and the moon, according to the Vedas, is something altogether entirely different from that. But the Shudras insist, no, we will take our Shudra knowledge and bring it into this subject matter, relationship between earth and moon. The Vedanta describes the universe, that the earth is within the region of the universe which is called Shtula, or gross physical matter. Yes, and all right, so that Shudra type of thinking works here. But the moon is situated within the region called Linga, which means subtle. So immediately we have a problem, because you cannot move from the gross realm to the subtle realm by this Shudra knowledge of simply spatial physical relationships. Another process must be there, and therefore Prabhupada has explained that process in his book, Easy Journey to Other Planets. So anyway, this is Shudra knowledge. Then Vaishya is more advanced than Shudra, because he knows how to put, of course, just for commercial purposes, but he knows how to put abstract values on things. For example, here's a flower. So Shudra mentality, I'll just look at this flower. Well, it's so big, and it weighs so much, you see. And even, it has a smell. Okay, that's nice. And that's it, you see. But a Vaishya will think, this flower is worth something. I can take it to market, this flower and many other such roses, and sell them. So he puts an abstract value on this, that one rose for, 2 cents or something, 5 cents, 10 cents, whatever the price of one rose is. I have no idea. But they have flower shops, and they put some. Now, this abstraction of price, you will not see this with your pratyaksha. You'll not be able to look and find somewhere. Of course, they put price tags on things, don't they? But a flower, at least in the garden, You'll not be able to find any, that God has put some price tag on this. So it is not evident to our gross sense perception. This is an abstraction. And therefore, Vaishyas are more intelligent. I remember meeting a Vaishya, a genuine Vaishya, Marwari Indian. And they're genuine, coming in a family line from the village of Mawar in Rajasthan, but they have spread all over India. And they're genuine, old-fashioned Vedic Vaishnavas. Yes, they're Vaishnavas and they're Vaishyas. They're all devotees of Krishna. So Prabhupada was very interested when he started ISKCON that the devotees preach to these Marwaris because they're very wealthy. And being pious, being materialistic on the one side, they're not going to become, they're not going to join ISKCON themselves and take up life of renunciation because there's so much thinking, no, we are Vaishnavas, we are Vaishyas. So we don't do that. We don't become sannyasis. But they love Krishna, so they will use their wealth. They're very wealthy. So therefore devotees have great experience in preaching to these Marwaris. So I visited with Bhaktivedanta Purna Maharaj, a Marwari businessman in Calcutta, who was living in a $1 million apartment. The apartment was totally marble, floor, wall, ceiling. Everything marble. Big apartment, whole floor of a, not just room on a floor of a skyscraper building, but it was the whole floor. You took the elevator up to that floor, and you got out of the elevator, and that was his apartment, the whole floor. So we visited him, and he was a very nice gentleman. His family was there, and we took lunch, prasad, at his place, and he was telling us, Bhaktivedanta Purna Maharaj is very interested in Varna Ashram, and these Marwaris are very Varna Ashram oriented people. They're Vaishyas. It means they're not so learned in Shastra, but they have their tradition, and they know that tradition very well. So he was explaining. It was very interesting. So anyway, apart from talking about the nature of the Vaishya ashram, he was telling us also how he makes his money. And he's a very wealthy man and making crores of rupees every year. And he says, I don't go anywhere. I just sit here in my apartment. I have my telephone. And I'm calling up other Marwari businessmen all over India and making deals with them. You see, businessmen here in Calcutta, they come to me. We want a truckload of raw, of steel, for example, just raw steel pipes or whatever it is. We need such a truckload for our construction, and we need it cheaper than anywhere. So then I call up a Marwari friend somewhere, and I make a deal with him, and then I call up this gentleman here in Calcutta who needs the steel, and I say, you can get this steel for such and such price. You see, he has told me, my friend, one price. I've added a little bit on top for myself. And I call him and I say, you can get it for this price. He says, all right. And then we arrange the transaction. And so this way I'm taking something off the top of every deal, and that's how I make my money. I just sit here. So this is intelligent. This man is making crores of rupees every year just by sitting in his apartment with a telephone. Or Shudra thinks, I have to go out and work, I have to, lift heavy loads and do this and that. But a Vaishya is more intelligent. He can sit in one place and just, make business without having. And of course, these Marwaris are famously rather large because they don't get around so much. That's the typical image of a Marwari. So in India, if you hear Marwari, you immediately think of a rather overweight person because they're not physically active, but they are very intelligent for making money. So this is Vaishya. He knows the value of things. He knows how to manipulate the material value of things. And then above them, the Kshatriyas. Now the Kshatriyas are endowed with a very, very strong sense of honor, morality, justice, nobility, which the Vaishyas don't have. The Vaishyas, like Prabhupada says, they will tell you very sincerely, for you I am making no profit. You see, you can barter with them and come down, and then finally they'll reach a price where he says, all right, simply because you're my friend, I'll give this item to you for this price, but I tell you, I'm not making any profit. But that is a lie. He is making profit, otherwise he would not be a businessman. He could not be a Vaishya. Prabhupada said, to make business you must cheat. It is part and parcel. You cannot, no one can be successful, at least successful in business, without some cheating or other. But Kshatriyas, they're very honor bound. And this is very important because they're also very powerful, very forceful type of persons. So they enforce an honor code upon the rest of society. In other words, they enforce the law. And without the Kshatriyas, society would be lawless. Because it's not even, you can say, Shudras are immoral. They're actually amoral in their own nature. Amoral means they don't understand morality. Immoral means you know morality, but you have decided, I'm going to be bad. I would rather be bad than good. But amoral means they really don't get it, what morality is, because they're so much overwhelmed by their senses. And therefore, like a child, a little child, uneducated child, will do bad things, not out of bad intention, but just because it doesn't know any better. An animal also will do bad things, pass stool, anywhere in the house, not because it has some deliberate intention to disturb you, to aggravate you, but just when it's time to pass stool, you pass stool, wherever you are. That's, So, but Kshatriyas are very, very extremely moral personalities. Then above them, the Brahmanas. And the Brahmanas are wise. And they're the actual head of society. They see things through Shastra Shakshush, the eyes of scripture, but also not, shall we say, dogmatically. This word dogmatically means not, that would also be blind. There is something called bichar added. Bichar means deliberation, because there are so many shastric statements. In fact, as is admitted in the Shastras themselves, Mahabharata, vibhina, the Shastras even contradict one another. And so, you have, this is now, you can see the difference between what we call an academician, a mundane academic scholar, and a Brahmin, is that the academic, he'll take the Vedic Shastras and look through them and say, oh, here's a contradiction. Oh, here's a contradiction. Ha ha, here's another contradiction. Wow, how can anyone believe in this? So many contradictions, you see. Or maybe this person does, in a sense, believe, but he reads the Shastras, as we say, looking for loopholes. You see, this is another way of doing the same thing. And this way, oh yeah, I believe in the Shastras, but I found in the Shastras, here it says this, and there it says this. So that means a gap opens up, and I can go through the gap and do my thing, you see, do what I like. And you can't criticize me because, yes, well, you're quoting that Shastra that says what I'm doing is wrong. But I found over in this Shastra that it's okay. You see, so this is not a Brahman. This is something else. There are other classes of intelligence, like Sutta is a type of Shudra, actually. So if a Sutta is a pure devotee, like Suhotra Goswami, who is a reciter of the Bhagavatam, then that's all right. But generally, Sutta is a type of educated Shudra. A Sutta is one who can learn, who can recite, but he doesn't understand. Sutta also can be a poet. This is another thing. Poets are very good in putting together words that evoke imagery and some kind of experience in people's mind when they hear it. But a poet may himself, just be playing with the words to create effects, and in this way go away from the actual siddhanta. This is why this one we see that Swarup Damodar Goswami criticized one poet. You know this from Chaitanya Charitamrita, who came with the intention of glorifying Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, but his intention was to, in the poem, he was declaring that Brahman has appeared, God has appeared here in Jagannath Puri in the form of Sri Jagannath, but he is Daru Brahman, or Brahman in the form of wood, so therefore he doesn't go anywhere. He just stays in the temple. But you are the Supreme Brahman, you Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and you are going here and there, something like that. So in other words, he was trying to address Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as God himself. And Swarup Damodar, although that is true actually, but this man was doing it in an impersonal way. So in this way he was simultaneously making an offense against Lord Jagannath and against Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So his language was all very ornate and very, it is described that everyone, the devotees who heard this poetry, they were all going, oh yes, very nice, very beautiful, you see. But Swarup Damodar Goswami cut through all the ornateness and all the, all of that, the poetry, and got to the heart, Siddhanta, and pointed out that you're on the wrong track, sir, and therefore we cannot allow this poem to be read to Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. This is rasabasa. This will displease him. So you're not allowed to read this poem. And of course this poet was very distressed, but Goswami Maharaj explained to him the problem, and he understood. So you see, this is sutta, poet. They play with words. They can create effects with words, but they actually themselves do not know what is the real use of language. Like it says in Vedanta Sutra, very nice, one of the aphorisms in Vedanta Sutra proclaims that every word is a name of God. We done there? Okay, every word is a name of God. Therefore, language has its potency. See, language has a very mysterious potency, which Western... Are you coming in, Prabhu? Oh, then come in. Make an entrance. We all want to see you. Come in and sit down. Hare Krishna. Every word is the name of God. Because language has the most mysterious, inconceivable power. Just like I'm talking to you. I'm speaking words. What are these words? There's some sound forms emanating from my mouth. Now why should these sounds manifest information in your consciousness? Why should that happen? Or a squiggle of writing. I write something on a piece of paper. It's just a squiggly line. You look at it and information manifests in your consciousness. How is that? You see? That is not understood. The power is recognized, for instance, in modern Western philosophy. There are philosophers like Wittgenstein, philosophers of language, who have recognized that he has called it the bewitching power of language. Language is so powerful. Hare Krishna. But he has not been able to explain. Okay. He's not been able to explain how this happens. I was having a program in the University of Amsterdam, and there was one Andre van der Braak, Nietzschean devotee of Nietzsche. I'll talk about that a little bit. I was thinking of speaking about this in connection with something in this purport. But just for now, just to say, I was bringing up this point of language because Mr. van der Braak, who is a very interesting and sad case himself, he was arguing in his, we both gave a lecture. I spoke on Krishna consciousness, he spoke on his Nietzschean doctrine. So he was arguing that there are two ways of viewing the world. One is as cosmos and the other as chaos. Cosmos is a Greek word. Of course we use this word cosmos now, meaning the universe, but it has in the ancient Greek context a very specific meaning of ordered universe. Just like here in this purport, Srila Prabhupada is talking about an order to things. He's talking about how all living entities, all living beings are under the protection of the Lord. And he mentions here, according to different grades. According to their karma, they have different grades of protection under the Lord's energy. This is indirect protection. Therefore, in this universe, you see, you have the lowest living entities up to the topmost living entities in higher planets. They're all within the material energy. But there's a gradation according to what Mr. van der Braak was describing as moral value, which he had no time for at all. And there's a very disastrous consequence of this philosophy, which I'll talk about later. But anyway, out of his own personal frustration with his own attempts at becoming spiritually advanced, he had arrived at this nihilistic conclusion. Of course, he was very careful, being an intellectual. Intellectuals are very careful with their words. So he would always drop a footnote, but I am a relative skeptic. I'm not an absolute skeptic. Absolute skeptic is just as good as a believer in God. You see, as an absolute skeptic, he declares there is no God, there is no truth, there is no meaning. But I don't say that. I say simply, I don't see it. There may be, but I don't see any now. You see, like that. But then he goes on quoting, Nietzsche at least 10 times in his talk. God is dead. Nietzsche said God is dead. Nietzsche said God is dead. Nietzsche said God. So you see, there's two kinds of communication. There's explicit and implicit, or explicit and tacit. There's what you say openly, it is like this, and there's what you imply. You see, someone who says 10 times in his lecture, God is dead, says Friedrich Nietzsche. And then once in a while he says, of course, I don't know. But Nietzsche said God is dead. And as soon as he's quoting Nietzsche, his face gets bright. There's a big smile on his face. Well, you know where he's at. And you know what he really believes. And you know what he wants others to believe too. But, to avoid being caught in a trap where, the question can be raised, if you say God is dead, that means you have absolute knowledge. No, I'm a relative skeptic. I don't know. Well, he had a great line. What I know is that I don't know. Of course, you have to be very, very careful in public programs with such people. The students, many of them, with themselves were of this skeptical nature, skeptical, so-called rational nature. So you have to avoid what is called ad hominem arguments, which means attacking the person. But, obviously, when you hear someone say that all I know is that I don't know, then, you're inclined to say that what the hell are you talking for if you don't know anything? Why don't you just get up and say, all I know is I don't know, and then sit down? Why do you have to give a 45-minute lecture about all the things that you're not sure about? So this is, you see, there's an implicit form of communication. And this is rascaldom. This is actually, you see, this is a gulf between Vaishnavism and, again, Mayavadi. But he was a former Mayavadi himself. He used to be Buddhist and then Advaitist and became frustrated naturally. And then became a Nietzschean nihilist, which is just another form of Mayavadi philosophy. But the difference between the Mayavadis and the Vaishnavas is that the Vaishnavas say what they mean. This is called Mukhya Vritti. We take the Shastras literally. Mukhya means face. Vritti means meaning. The upfront facial meaning. You see? Direct interpretation. Whereas the Mayavadis, they go for what is called Gauna Vritti. Gauna means indirect, means, you make a string of speculations. You go from the word itself, or the statement itself, the sentence itself, and you make a string of speculations, like Prabhupada, it wasn't Srila Prabhupada, it was one of my godbrothers, he used to often say in his lecture, quoting one famous Mayavadi, so-called sannyasi. He was once asked by reporters, you're a sannyasi, but you have so many women around you. You're always seen to be surrounded by beautiful women disciples. And he said, well, Krishna had his gopis too. So this was the kind of sannyasi he was. Or he is, he's still alive. And, but he once said that in Gita, we find it proclaimed that Krishna is God. Krishna is Bhagavan. Now, Krishna means black. Black means unknown. You see, this is the Gauna Vritti process. Krishna is God, but Krishna also, among other meanings, besides all attractive and so on, one who ends birth and death. Krishna also in the mundane dictionary, Sanskrit dictionary, simply means black. So Krishna is also black. But Prabhupada said, not that kind of black. But anyway, it is possible to take this meaning. So he said, Krishna is God, but Krishna means black. And then further, black means unknown. You see, you can actually talk in that way about a subject matter that it is, it is so dark to me, or this is absolute blackness to me, meaning that I can't penetrate this subject matter. So Krishna means black, and black means unknown, therefore God is unknown. That was his conclusion. So this is Gauna Vritti. And this is what the Mayavadis, this is their whole thing. Is they play with words, Prabhupada called it word jugglery. Jumping from one context to another context, to another context, to another context, to arrive at what they really want to say, or maybe better say, imply. Because as I was pointing out to Mr. Vanderbroek, I was saying, in your whole talk, I said, you give something to us with your right hand, and then you take it away with your left hand. So what are you really saying here? Because he makes a statement, and then he qualifies the statement. Because he doesn't want to be pinned down. He was very, because of his, you see, this was a reaction to his having had a guru, not a guru from India, an American guru, And this guru was a Mayavadi, a total Mayavadi, but also a guru, speaking very... I found out about this guru on the internet. So he is that type of personality who's very influential, very kind of like overwhelming others. He's immediately the center of attention, and is very skilled to cut through people's uncertainty, and this is the way it is, and therefore he has followers. So Mr. Van der Braak had followed this guru for 11 years and then discovered he's not really leading me anywhere. Mayavadi philosophy doesn't really go anywhere. So he discovered this. So now his whole thought process is trying to extricate himself, to remove himself from authoritative systems of thinking. So therefore this is very much embedded in his consciousness. So therefore he's very careful with how he uses words, because he doesn't want to be accused of trying to be an authority. He doesn't want to be accused by others. Oh, you're being a guru too. So the way he does this is that everything is by implication, not by explication. He doesn't say, it is like this. He says, Nietzsche says it is like this, but I'm a relative skeptic, so I don't really know. So finally I asked him, well, the program closed, just about closed on this note where I asked him, my dear Mr. Van der Berg, can you say with any certainty that we are here in the University of Amsterdam discussing philosophy? Or if, as you say, you quote Nietzsche, everything is chaos, so might it be that this is just a big illusion we're having? Are we really here in the University of Amsterdam discussing philosophy? Or are we not? And he looked at me and he said, I don't know. So, see, if a person is not even sure if he's here or not, this is a very questionable source of knowledge. But he's a very good follower of Nietzsche, I must say. Because Nietzsche, his last 10 years of his life, went totally insane. He lived in a place called Sils Maria in Switzerland. He was a total madman. He'd written all these very voluminous texts, with big words, philosophical texts, for the earlier part of his life. But the last 10 years of his life, he couldn't even talk because he had become so mentally dysfunctional. So this is where this type of philosophy leads, actually. If a man says, actually I'm not sure if I'm here or not, this is the beginning of insanity. So it was already evident in him. I mean, I'm not, actually I don't mean to demean this person. I kind of liked him. I mean, he was a textbook case of the fallacy of following Mayavadi philosophy. And but he was sort of a nice guy, and he was even sort of sympathetic because, he stuttered. He was a lecturer in a university, speaking students, but he couldn't speak properly. He would say, and then Nietzsche says like this. He would talk, and it may sound funny here, but there I was kind of feeling sorry for him. And I was even feeling, well, at least he's a speaker. He's trying to speak. He has this speech defect, but so even you get sympathetic for him. He's still trying. But totally on the wrong path. So I felt sorry for him. And in the talk I didn't smash him. Wouldn't have been good for the students either, because a lot of them were of this skeptical type. So what I used was what's called this maieutic method of Socrates. You just ask questions. You just, on the basis of what you've said, do you mean this or do you mean that? And in this way I got him, to say, I don't know. I asked him, you say you have accepted this chaos philosophy to create room in your mind, to remove all cosmic assumptions, assumptions of an ordered universe, so that you can better understand things. I said, so if this making room leads you to a new understanding of order, will you and hierarchy and cosmos, will you accept that? And he had to admit, yes, I will. So then I thought, well, that's good. At least he admitted that much. So, anyway, where were we? That was a long digression.
The joke.
We were talking about...
Spoke about the joke.
Your rice.
Oh yeah, back to the joke. All the way back to the joke. Oh
We want to hear the joke.
Boy, that was really a long digression. Back to the joke. Yes, Guru Paramartika. So yeah, the original question was, the original issue we were talking about is the relationship between God and his energy. And the Mayavadis say God does not have energy, he does not have shakti. Brahman does not have shakti, Brahman just is. So then, but there is this world, and although the Mayavadis might say that this world is just Maya, just illusion, still they have to admit themselves as being caught in this illusion, therefore they're taking up the whole Mayavadi discipline and philosophy, which is very, it's a very great challenge, both to the intellect and also to the senses, because at least the Orthodox Mayavadi philosophies who follow Shankara, their doctrine states that you cannot achieve liberation until you take sannyas. You see, all those who are not sannyasis, they may have theoretically accepted this Vivartavad of Shankaracharya, but they cannot realize it. You must take sannyas, and that means you must renounce all Sanskrit. And this Prabhupada, you probably have read, Prabhupada states that the Mayavadi sannyasis are much stricter than the Vaishnava sannyasis. They're much stricter, because Vaishnava sannyas is oriented to this Yukta Vairagya of Rupa Goswami, and that everything is Krishna Sambandha, so engage everything in Krishna's service. So really, really strict, old style Mayavadi sannyasis, they won't even get in a car. Car is Maya, you walk. You see, want to go to Himalayas, to pilgrimage, you're starting off from Sringeri Math in Kerala, southernmost India, you walk. You walk up to the Himalayas. You can't take a train. That's a real, staunch Mayavadi sannyasi. Prabhupada said they've been ordered by Shankara to study Vedanta. So Prabhupada gave this example. So they have Vedanta Sutra in front of them, and they're turning, or Upanishads, and they're turning the pages. And this is their sadhana, I must study Vedanta. So even they're studying, they're like this, and the big scorpion comes crawling along. They will still continue to read and remind the scorpion. The scorpion is not there. The scorpion is just Maya. Keep reading Vedanta. Scorpion is on their hand. Still just turn the page. Scorpion doesn't exist. Just Maya. Scorpion stings. That is nothing. That is just illusion. This is their discipline. Of course, in the West, there's so many Mayavadis who follow such teachings like, now he's known as Osho. Well, now he's dead, but his last name for himself was Osho. Before it was Bhagavan, and before that it was Acharya. You know who I'm talking about. Don't mention the name, please. But anyway, this Osho, he wrote a book called Sambhoga Se Samadhi, which in Hindi means Samadhi through Sambhog means sex. So this is the, neo-Mayavadi philosophy. Since in Mayavadi philosophy there's sometimes even the statement that Brahman is Maya and Maya is Brahman, Nirvana is Samsara, Samsara is Nirvana. They ultimately, it's a paradoxical circle. So then these new neo-Mayavadi rascals, they take it to the absurd conclusion that, so if Brahman is Maya, then take the most extreme form of Maya, and that will be your Brahman. That will be your enlightenment. So this is totally outside of orthodoxy entirely. Shankara said you must be sannyasi. So anyway, we still haven't told the joke yet. This is a very hard joke to tell. So I started to tell it. The man went in the restaurant because again, the whole point is what is the relationship between Brahman and his energy? So to realize Brahman, you must give up the energy, you must take sannyas, you must get out of the shakti, you must get out of the maya because there is no relationship. That's the point. There is no relationship. Brahman has no shakti. So if you're in the shakti, if you're in the maya, and you cannot know Brahman, that's the point. And what is the relationship between Brahman and shakti? Don't ask that question. Anirvachini. So to illustrate the fallacy, the logical fallacy of this, there's a story of the poor man who had only enough money in his pocket for one plate of cooked white rice, plain white rice. But there were also samosas being cooked in the store, and the whole shop was pervaded with the smell of samosas. So the man took his rice, and then it was time to pay. So he had just enough money in his pocket to pay for the rice. But the proprietor, that was why I was telling you about Varnashram. The proprietor, Vaishya, he was a dishonest man. So he said, all right, you have eaten a plate of my rice, but you have eaten it in my hotel, in my establishment. And therefore you have been smelling as you ate. You have been smelling my samosas. So I must charge you extra for the smell of the samosa. And this man said, what? What are you saying? No. You have also enjoyed my samosas by smelling them. So you must pay. Now the idea, this is, you see, I said this is funny, but this is pointing again to this Mayavadi paradox of the relationship between Brahman and Maya. They say there is no relationship, but obviously if Brahman is the absolute truth, there must be some kind of relationship. So it's like the smell of something. Brahman has the smell of Maya. You see, somehow or other. There is a smell of illusion associated with Brahman. You can't really fix it together, but there's some relationship. So this is the idea. The poor man was perplexed what to do. Why is he asking me for more money for just smelling his samosas? And then there was one Brahmin, intelligent person. He saw this whole conversation. So he said, don't worry, to the poor man. He said, I'll take care of it. And so the Brahman, he reached into his own pocket and took out some money. And the merchant, the man who ran the shop, became very excited because he thought, well, this poor man, he can't pay, but this Brahman, although he's supposed to be intelligent, seems like he's a fool. It looks like he's going to pay me. Okay, I don't mind. I don't mind where the money comes from. I just want to cheat, get more money for the smell of my samosas, so let this Brahman pay. What the Brahman did was, he put the money in front of the man's nose. He said, you smell this money, and that will be your payment for the smell of the samosas.